Shockwaves are rippling through the gospel world today. Bishop Noel Jones, the iconic leader and brother of Grace Jones, suddenly collapsed mid-sermon on stage, leaving his congregation stunned and his wife, Loretta, in visible tears. What really happened behind the scenes moments before this collapse? And why are insiders saying this wasn't just a health scare, but something much deeper? Stay with us, because this story only gets more heartbreaking from here. Bishop Noel Jones, a towering figure in the world of modern gospel ministry, is no stranger to controversy or headlines, but what happened last Sunday shook not just his congregation, but the entire faith community. After delivering a passionate message mid-sermon, the 74-year-old suddenly stumbled, clutched his chest, and collapsed right in front of hundreds of horrified witnesses. His wife, Loretta Jones, who had been sitting in the front pew, rushed toward the pulpit in tears, screaming for help as paramedics were called. Within minutes, Noel Jones was rushed to the intensive care unit, but what happened next was even more shocking. In today's deep dive, we're unpacking exactly what led to this terrifying incident, what close family members are saying about his health, and how church insiders believe this may have been a warning sign ignored for far too long. You won't believe the behind-the-scenes chaos and why some church board members are now pointing fingers. And trust me, it's not what you think. Stick around, because in just a moment we'll uncover a major revelation from inside the hospital, and an unexpected move from Loretta Jones that has left many wondering if there's more to this story than meets the eye. It was supposed to be just another Sunday service at the City of Refuge Church in Gardena, California. The kind of electrifying, spirit-filled gathering Bishop Noel Jones was known for. A packed house, gospel music vibrating off the walls, hands lifted in worship, and Bishop Jones at the helm, delivering a fiery sermon titled, "When the Body Can't Carry the Calling." But then, it happened. Eyewitnesses recall that about 30 minutes into his sermon, Bishop Jones began to slow his pace. His voice, usually strong and commanding, started to tremble. At first, many thought he was just overwhelmed by the Spirit, a common moment in charismatic preaching. But then, his left hand gripped the podium tightly. His right hand went to his chest. Then came the collapse. Gasps filled the room as the bishop stumbled backwards, knocking over his microphone stand. Loretta Jones, seated beside the choir, instantly leapt from her seat and rushed toward the pulpit. "Call 911, she shouted, according to one church member. Others from the pastoral staff joined her in panic, trying to keep the bishop conscious. Within minutes, emergency medical services arrived. Bishop Jones was unconscious but breathing. Paramedics quickly administered oxygen and loaded him onto a stretcher, with Loretta sobbing by his side. The congregation, 100 strong, began to sing hymns through tears, praying aloud, some kneeling on the ground in desperation. One of the ushers later said, "It wasn't just scary, it felt spiritual, like something deeper was going on, like we had just watched a moment we weren't supposed to see." But here's the shocking part they don't want you to know. A close church insider revealed to our team that Bishop Noel had been advised just days earlier to cancel his preaching schedule due to elevated blood pressure and signs of cardiac fatigue, yet he refused. Why? According to one source, he said, "If I die in the pulpit, I'll die doing God's work." That statement now hits different. But before we talk about his current ICU status and the tense hospital moments with Loretta, let's rewind a bit, because this wasn't the first sign of something being dangerously wrong. What happened on that Sunday wasn't entirely unexpected, at least not to those closest to Bishop Noel Jones. For months now, whispers have circled within the inner circles of the City of Refuge leadership. Some noticed subtle changes: his slower pace when walking to the pulpit, moments where he seemed to lose focus mid-sermon, and an increasing reliance on assistants to help him off stage. Privately, some church elders reportedly raised concerns. "He's pushing too hard," one deacon shared, requesting anonymity. The travel, the preaching schedule, the stress from running a mega ministry and counseling others, it was taking a toll. We could see it. And it wasn't just physical exhaustion. Sources close to the family say that Bishop Jones was silently battling high blood pressure, chronic fatigue, and early signs of heart strain. One insider went as far as to say he'd experienced 2 minor episodes in the past year where he momentarily lost consciousness, but chalked it up to dehydration or stress. Still, Bishop Jones kept going. Just last month, he returned from a 3-city revival tour across Texas and Georgia. In one of the church's social media videos, you can see him wiping his brow repeatedly and pausing more than usual. Subtle, but telling signs of strain. Why didn't he slow down? The answer may lie in the very foundation of who Bishop Noel Jones is. Known for his intense commitment to ministry, Jones has always carried the reputation of being the Iron Man of gospel preaching. Even as he aged into his 70s, he refused to take a back seat. He once said in an interview, "I'll rest when the Lord calls me home." But some believe it wasn't just spiritual zeal driving him. Behind the scenes, financial pressures, declining health, and internal conflicts in the church hierarchy may have been weighing heavier on him than most realized. Since merging his ministry into the larger City of Refuge structure, rumors have swirled about tensions among board members, alleged mismanagement of funds, and even struggles to keep up with mortgage payments on certain church properties. This kind of stress, combined with his demanding speaking schedule, created a perfect storm. And what about Loretta? Insiders say she had been begging him to slow down for months. A family friend close to the Jones household claimed that Loretta even broke down in tears 2 weeks ago, asking him to see a specialist. But Bishop Noel, stubborn and deeply rooted in faith, replied, "God will keep me. I'm covered." Sadly, her worst fears materialized right before her eyes. But wait, there's something even more haunting. According to a medical staff member at the hospital who spoke under confidentiality, the bishop may have ignored direct medical advice just 48 hours before his collapse. And when you hear what they told him, your jaw will drop. As the ambulance pulled away from the church, lights flashing and sirens blaring, Bishop Noel Jones was slipping in and out of consciousness. Sources from within the hospital say that his blood pressure was dangerously high, and his heart was showing signs of acute stress. He was rushed straight into the intensive care unit at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. But what happened after he arrived was not what Loretta or the church family expected. According to a nurse who was on call that evening, Bishop Jones suffered a hypertensive emergency, a condition where blood pressure spikes to life-threatening levels and begins to damage organs. If left untreated, it can be fatal. And here's where it gets chilling. The hospital staff revealed that just 48 hours prior to his collapse, Bishop Jones had visited the same hospital for chest pain and dizziness. After running initial tests, doctors reportedly urged him to stay overnight for observation, warning of irregular heart rhythms, but Jones declined. He said he had to preach, the nurse shared. He literally said, "The people need me this Sunday," and he walked out of that hospital. Loretta was reportedly devastated when she learned about this decision. One of her close friends, who later visited her at the hospital, said she was crying uncontrollably, repeating the words, I told him this would happen." Family members were quickly notified, and over the next few hours, several key figures gathered at the ICU, siblings, close friends, and even members of the church board. The scene was tense. Emotions were raw. What unfolded behind those hospital walls was a mix of grief, frustration, and tough conversations. According to one insider, a doctor met with Loretta and the family in a closed-door consultation and delivered the most sobering news yet. Bishop Jones had not only suffered a hypertensive crisis, but doctors discovered signs of early congestive heart failure, a condition that doesn't just go away. "He's been running on fumes for years," the doctor reportedly said, "and his body has reached its breaking point." The words hit Loretta like a freight train. Witnesses say she collapsed into her chair, barely able to breathe, as tears streamed down her face. Church staff tried to console her, but the truth was undeniable. The man she loved, the pastor she supported for over 2 decades, had ignored every warning. And now the cost might be permanent. But that's not all. What truly stunned those in the room was a secret letter Bishop Jones reportedly left in his study, only to be found by his assistant after the collapse. The letter, handwritten and marked for Loretta only, was delivered to her at the hospital. The contents of that letter still unknown to the public. However, a source close to the family hinted that the letter might contain final instructions, including possible plans to step down from active ministry and even an apology to Loretta for not listening sooner. But as Loretta sat by his bedside, holding his hand and praying softly into his ear, one doctor entered with a shocking proposal that left the entire family frozen. What he said next could change Bishop Noel Jones's entire future, both in ministry and in life. As the clock ticked past midnight at Cedars-Sinai, the ICU waiting room was anything but quiet. Church members rotated in and out. Security had to be called in to manage the flow of emotional visitors. And meanwhile, inside room 514, Bishop Noel Jones remained sedated, hooked to monitors and IVs, with his heart rate closely monitored minute by minute. Then, something happened that shifted the entire tone of the night. At approximately 1:12 a.m., the lead cardiologist entered the room where Loretta, family members, and two key leaders from the church board had gathered. According to one person present, the doctor didn't sugarcoat a thing. If he continues at the pace he's going, he won't survive the next episode. His body is deteriorating. His heart cannot take another collapse. You all need to seriously consider placing him on permanent medical leave immediately. The room went silent. Loretta, still visibly shaken, nodded in understanding. She didn't need convincing, but not everyone agreed. One high-ranking board member reportedly pushed back, asking, "Are we talking about a temporary sabbatical or full retirement? Because the bishop isn't just a man, he's the brand." That's when the real cracks within the ministry began to show. Behind the scenes, there's been a growing power struggle in the City of Refuge leadership. Some factions had quietly been pushing for Bishop Noel to pass the torch, especially after recent controversies surrounding mismanaged events, delayed payments to staff, and lower attendance during midweek services. But now, with Bishop Noel incapacitated and his medical team suggesting full withdrawal from preaching, those silent tensions erupted. Another insider told us some of them started making moves that night. Calls were made, emails sent. Certain people saw this as their window to finally take over. While Loretta was praying over her husband, others were planning what comes next without him. And here's where it gets even more intense. Church bylaws reportedly state that if a senior pastor is medically unable to perform his duties for more than 30 days, a transition committee can be appointed to temporarily replace him. That clause, meant as a backup safeguard, suddenly became a weaponized tool for power. By the next morning, rumors were already circulating through the church's private group chats. Is Bishop stepping down? Did he really have a heart attack? Is Pastor Ray taking over? Where is Loretta now? But while all of this was unfolding, Loretta made a surprising move. Despite her emotional exhaustion, she called a closed-door meeting with the hospital's chaplain and her legal counsel. Though the full details remain private, sources close to the situation say she's considering legally securing Bishop Jones's legacy and wishes, in case any sudden leadership takeovers attempt to override his intentions. Some even speculate she might release parts of the handwritten letter he left behind, not just as a final message to her, but as a directive to the entire church. But before anyone could reach a conclusion, Bishop Jones himself made a sudden move that shocked everyone. Barely awake, his hand twitched. And what he whispered next left Loretta, the doctor, and the church leaders speechless. It was nearly 36 hours after the collapse when Bishop Noel Jones finally opened his eyes. The room was dimly lit. Machines softly beeped. Loretta had barely left his side, clutching his hand, whispering prayers, and watching over him with red, swollen eyes. Then his fingers moved, and she gasped. One of the nurses leaned over, gently tapping him. "Bishop, can you hear me?" He blinked, and a faint "yes" slipped from his lips. But what followed next wasn't just a moment of relief. It was a moment that would change everything. According to Loretta and a close family member present, Bishop Noel turned his head slightly, locked eyes with Loretta, and whispered something that caused her to instantly burst into tears. "I'm sorry I didn't listen." That sentence broke the silence of the room, and it shattered Loretta's heart. She reportedly leaned over, kissed his forehead, and told him, "You're still here. That's all that matters." The bishop was barely able to speak, but he reportedly said more as doctors adjusted his oxygen. When asked by the cardiologist about his plans moving forward, Noel Jones responded with a soft, raspy tone, "The people need a shepherd, but maybe it's time to teach them how to walk without me." Those words echoed with weight. Was this the beginning of the end of his pastoral journey? That moment was deeply symbolic. Not only was Bishop Jones acknowledging his own mortality, but for the first time, he was expressing a willingness to let go. Loretta, who had stood by his side for over 2 decades through criticism, delays in marriage, public scrutiny, and now this near-death experience, told a nurse afterward, "I knew he loved the church, but I didn't know he loved it more than his life." But here's where it takes another emotional turn. Before the doctors could explain the next steps of recovery, Bishop Jones made a shocking request: "Bring me a notepad." Barely strong enough to hold a pen, he began writing, drafting what insiders believe may be a farewell letter or a transitional document. Some believe it's a direct message to the congregation. Others say it's a blueprint for succession. Regardless of its contents, that notepad is now locked in a safe, reportedly under Loretta's supervision. Meanwhile, news of his awakening began to ripple through the congregation and the broader faith community. Social media exploded. Fans, believers, and celebrities from across the gospel world, including Kirk Franklin, Donnie McClurkin, and even Grace Jones, began posting tributes, prayers, and expressions of shock. On Twitter, the hashtag #PrayForBishopJones began trending within hours. But as the world prayed, the church leadership scrambled. While some board members were relieved by his survival, others immediately began questioning the timeline for his return. "Can he come back next month?" one assistant pastor allegedly asked. "Do we announce a retirement or just a recovery plan?" another inquired. The pressure was building. And Loretta? She wasn't having it. Sources say she stood firm in a private meeting stating, "His health comes first, not the platform. He's not returning to that pulpit until he's fully ready. And even then, only if he wants to." For the first time in years, it seemed like Loretta Jones was finally taking control of the narrative, not just as his wife, but as his protector. But just as things seemed to settle down, a controversial church staff member leaked a voice note, allegedly recorded weeks before the collapse, that suggests Bishop Jones may have had advanced knowledge of his worsening condition and still chose silence. Just as the church was beginning to breathe a collective sigh of relief, another storm was quietly brewing, one that threatened to undo years of unity and spiritual trust within the walls of the City of Refuge. It started with a leak. Late Thursday night, a voice memo surfaced on a private church staff group chat, and by morning, it had spread across social media. The clip, just over 3 minutes long, was allegedly recorded during a private leadership meeting just 2 weeks prior to Bishop Jones's collapse. In the audio, which we've reviewed, a voice that sounds identical to Bishop Noel Jones can be heard saying, "I've been dizzy lately. There's something going on in my chest, but I won't stop now. I've made peace with God. If I fall preaching." Gasps, silence. Then another voice in the room, presumably a staff member, responds with alarm. "Bishop, that's dangerous. Maybe we should postpone the next 3 Sundays. But he cuts in firmly. "No, let the word go forth. I don't need sympathy. I need strength." While the authenticity of the recording hasn't been officially confirmed by his representatives, multiple church leaders have acknowledged hearing that exact conversation weeks earlier and choosing to remain silent out of respect for the bishop's authority. But now, that silence is being called into question. The leaked voice note has divided the congregation, igniting debates online and behind the pulpit. On one side, you have loyalists defending Bishop Noel's fierce commitment to his calling, calling him a spiritual warrior who chose purpose over personal preservation. On the other side, many are deeply concerned, calling it reckless, irresponsible, and even manipulative. One former staff member went on Facebook Live saying, "You don't get to gamble with your life when you lead thousands. That pulpit is sacred, but so is accountability. Some are even calling for a full investigation into church leadership decisions, demanding to know who knew what and why no one intervened. And through it all, Loretta has remained quiet, her only statement a short Instagram post with a black screen and the words, "Thank you for the prayers, he's still fighting." But inside sources say she's been privately furious about the leak and the way certain church leaders are using her husband's name for their own gain. She's also reportedly considering stepping into a formal leadership role, or at the very least publicly addressing the congregation once Bishop Jones is stable enough. As for Bishop Noel, doctors say the road ahead won't be easy. He faces a long period of cardiac rehabilitation, medication adjustments, and likely permanent lifestyle changes. One physician close to the case noted, even if he recovers physically, emotionally, and mentally, this event will leave a scar. There's still no official word on whether Bishop Jones will return to the pulpit, retire completely, or perhaps transition into a mentorship or emeritus role. But what is clear is this: his collapse has triggered a reckoning. A reckoning not just with his health, but with the very structure, transparency, and future of his ministry.